I'm gonna listen in. I'll be off screen, but I just wanted to say.
Oh, it's so nice to see you. Yes. Wow, great to see you. All right, we got Ann and Christy's popping out of the snow back there. That's hilarious. Oh, gosh. And Mookie's here. All right.
We just have to be level with each other and not wiggle. Okay.
That is funny. One appears and the other disappears. You keep going back and forth. Anyway. And hi, Leslie. How are you?
Can you scoot your chair forward a
Thanks
little
for
bit?
joining us.
I can't go back far enough. Yes.
All right.
Not wiggle. That's really hard. Well, we could.
Ann told me an amusing story today about a wannabe speaker, and she sort of watches my struggles with public speaking, you know, and apparently the speaker really wanted to do public speaking. He was actually a minister, but every time he'd get up in front of a group of people, he would faint. So hopefully that won't happen today. It reminded me also of the hi Paula and Serafina. It reminded me of my daughter had a friend whose mother, whenever she would get a speeding ticket, which apparently was somewhat frequently, she would just start crying. The policeman would pull her over and she'd just start bawling uncontrollably, and she never actually got a ticket. They would just take mercy on her. So that was a pretty good strategy. All right. We'll go a couple more. Oh, we got a few in the waiting room there, Vina. Lee, all right. Joe. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Joe's in his office, I see. Hope that's not your bedroom. Thanks for joining us today. It is a beautiful day in Fort Collins, if any of you are here. And if you're not, that's probably why. This is one of the most gorgeous days we've had in weeks over here. So hard to come inside and be on a Zoom call. But I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. And it'll be about an hour. And we can have a little music at the end, which is always a nice way to close. And I'm going to try to share just the real big picture of the philosophy and practices of yoga. And so if you're curious about it, this is from someone who's practiced for many years and studied for many years. This is a way to try to get your mind around it a little bit. What's the big deal about yoga? And of course, if you've been practicing for many years, meditating and practicing the teachings of yoga, it's always helpful to go back to the beginning and think about the first principles, the core inspiration, the core ideas that got you involved in wanting to be a yogi, to meditate, to work on these teachings. So we'll start with just a little bit of silence. And really, I remember a friend, I actually first was exposed to yoga when I was in high school. And I was raised Catholic. But it was the 60s. So the lid was kind of coming off culturally. And it was an all boys Catholic high school run by some brothers. And that's when I first learned about yoga. One of the brothers was very into meditating. And so it was my first exposure to see that, oh, what's this about? And but he told me a story about a lecture he went to on yoga. And the speaker came in, there was a desk at the front, a whole bunch of students, and he sat down and he closed his eyes and he said absolutely nothing for 30 minutes. And when it was done, he got up and he left. And that was his teaching of yoga. It's kind of a cool story because really there's nothing better than silence to impart really yoga or wisdom or what we're all searching for. So the more stillness, the more silence we can have in our lives, the more we'll be guided by the principles of yoga. And as we get to talking about these principles, you'll see what I mean in more detail. But let's just take a minute, just because it's always good to do, and sit comfortably with your spine straight, and close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep, slow breath. And as you exhale, feel like you're just letting go. Inhale again, slowly. As you exhale, let go of tension. Let go of concerns about the future or the past. See if you can come into that place of yoga, of union, one with yourself, one with your surroundings. Conscious of the fullness and the abundance of life within you and all around you. And just let yourself be in that space for a few moments. Om, peace. Amen. Those of you who saw the introduction to this class may remember, I hope you do, that I wanted to start the class with a question. And this is how I try to start a lot of our satsangs together, because it orients you in the right way about learning something new. The things that we learn come from within us. It's more a process of recognition of truth. And so we have stimulus from the outside, but really it's the awakening of our inner knowledge, intuition, that really counts for how we evolve and how we grow. As I was talking about, I was raised Catholic, and I didn't understand at that point the purpose of religion. I understood that it was a downloading of information and of an acceptance of the cultural norms and the ideas. And I didn't understand this very basic thing, that we have to orient from where we are. We are all starting from some point in the middle of our journey, and becoming conscious of who and where we are now is really the first step in learning how to grow. And so the science of yoga, when I first stumbled across it, for me, it really addressed that reality. It addressed the fact that I had learned certain things, I was mistaken about many things, and it gave me some tools, a roadmap, a way to approach more scientifically than I ever had before my own evolution and my own development. And this is the beauty of yoga. You'll see that it shows up in all different religions and all different paths, because the principles of yoga are universal. And as you'll see, as we talk more about this in this class, it helped me a lot, one, to be empathetic to people who have very different beliefs and very different ways of life, because I could recognize within whatever cultural norm shrouded their efforts at growth, at evolution, at their attempt for happiness and fulfillment in life. Whatever that was, I could relate it back to something in the yogic teaching that demonstrated that was a universal principle. So I think the teachings of yoga, when I got through my 4 years of Catholic high school, I called myself an atheist. That was sort of the sum of my experience there, which is kind of unfortunate. But it was true. I really didn't want any part of that sort of dogmatic and prescripted way of life that didn't really speak to who I was and where I wanted to go. And so the first step in yoga, as one of my teachers used to say, the best yoga posture is learning to stand on your own 2 feet. So that's a great starting point. You know, who are you? Where are you? What do you need for your next steps? These are critical questions to ask. And you will find many helps in the teachings of yoga that will help you to evolve. So let's start. Oh, one more point on that same wavelength. It reminds me a little bit of, and many of you have heard this story. I've told it a number of times, but the guy who lost his keys. So he's on the street, looking around, obviously, under this street lamppost. It's night, it's dark outside. And somebody walks up and says, "What are you looking for?" He said, "Oh, I lost my keys." He said, "Well, let me help you." So he, helps him. They start looking all around under the lamppost. And after a few minutes, the second guy says, "Well, where did you lose them?" And he said, "Well, I lost them over there, but it's dark over there and I can see over here." So that's a little bit what a yoga class is like, in my opinion. we could talk about these things, and it's good to talk about them. It does help. But really, the keys we're looking for are inside each of us. They're in that silence. They're in that knowing intuition. And we have to break the hypnosis of our thoughts and our desires and all the things that keep us externalizing our inner life upon the conditions of the world in order to explore the teachings of yoga. So yoga is really about physical, mental, and spiritual development. In that sense, it's wonderful because it leaves nothing out. There's systems of yoga that cover everything. And in Paramhansa Yogananda's teachings, they're very complete. He talks about business. He talks about success. He talks about health and diet. He talks about relationships. He talks about there's no part of life that can't be embraced as an opportunity for us to evolve and for us to grow. So as I said before, all religions have these basic components of yoga, and let's start with a few definitions. So yoga, as I'm sure most of you know, but in case you don't, literally means union. And you could equate that with oneness, connection, love, joy, all these things that mean that essential quality of fulfillment are really what we're talking about when we say yoga. Wholeness, I think, is a great synonym for yoga. Integration, completeness, truth, of course. It goes on, but you get the idea. You can translate your own core values into the word yoga, really. Yoga is that thing, that primary ideal, that primary urge we have for completeness, for wholeness, for joy. And that is really what yoga is. Like I said, it literally means union. Now, there are 3 and maybe 4 types of yoga. And they have to do with the 3 basic qualities of human beings. So human beings primarily, and these are arbitrary, all these 3 are very integrated, but primarily humans express themselves through feeling, through thought, and through will. And so the avenues of yoga are designed to address those 3 very basic components of human life: the heart, the feeling, the thought, the mind, the intellect, and the will, action. And so these are the three main branches of yoga. The heart being called Bhakti Yoga. You've probably heard that word. The Bhakti Yoga is the process of using the power of feeling to attain that union, to attain that wholeness, to attain that completeness. So a Bhakti yogi, the paradigm of a Bhakti yogi is that there is a lover and a beloved. And typically a Bhakti will have an image of the divine, whether divine mother or a great teacher or something that evokes love, some image that evokes love. And through the power of love, you evolve and you become one with that concept, that image. So that's sort of the paradigm of the Bhakti yogi. Just understanding that made me understand a lot of different religions, because all the images, I mean, the images in all the different religions are wild and woolly, as we all know. I mean, it's hard to relate to some of them for somebody who had 12 years of Catholic schooling. And but you understand that really what we're talking about is our own evolution, our own ability to love, our own ability to use the power of feeling to grow, to expand, to become one, to practice yoga. So that's the idea of a bhakti. And then the second kind is a karma yogi. So karma means action, and the karma yogi uses their will and is about energy and primarily actually service. So the basic strategy of a karma yogi is to use selfless service as a way to go beyond the little self and to embrace the larger self. It's really fun to see all these things borne out in modern day science. I don't know if any of you saw that article. Recently, there's that gal who teaches in Stanford. She's got a class on happiness, and it is literally the most popular class in the college. And so she's got a little bit of 15 minutes of fame going on it because she's become a little bit of a go-to person for understanding happiness, and all these principles of this one in particular, service. She talks about volunteering. People who volunteer, they live longer, they're happier. It's not rocket science. It's measurable. If you spend all your time dialing in on your own comforts, your own pleasures, your own little mud puddle of unhappiness, you will never find the joy that is available to you if you expand beyond that. So karma yogis seek to awaken that joy by serving others. And like I said, releasing the lower self in expansive service to the outer self. So the ideal is you work, but you don't work for the fruits of your actions. Your work is pure. You work for liberation. You work for everyone's well-being, everyone's good. And to the extent that you can do that, your actions will be liberating. And to the extent that you don't do that, they will be compressing, contracting, depressing in the end, because you aren't really exercising that soul quality of service in action. So that's karma yoga. Third one is Guyana Yoga. And Guyana Yoga is interesting. It's kind of like using the mind to go beyond the mind, kind of using thought to go beyond thought. Guyana Yoga includes practices such as contemplation. Most of you probably have read Autobiography of a Yogi. There's that great story of a sylvan setting and a teacher who sits there and he reads one passage from the Bhagavad Gita, and then they meditate for 45 minutes in silence. And then he asked at the end to his students there, have you understood? And one student says, yes, I think I got it. And he said, no, you don't have it. And then he meditates another hour, And so you're not just intellectually playing tennis with ideas, you're trying to realize the truth in these scriptures. You're trying to understand them so that they inform how you live, they inform how you be in the world. Intellectual understanding is a tiny, tiny, tiny step in really learning or knowing or understanding or realizing anything. So Guyana Yogi, like I said, seeks to go beyond that sort of enjoyment we all have by intellectual gymnastics to discover truths about ourselves that really transform us and bring us again to yoga. Now my own particular bias, one thing I'll say is that, so these are three main things: feeling, thinking, willing / acting, that we're all doing all the time. They're all interwoven, and they're not one exists without the other two. However, in most cases, each of us are sort of majoring in one and have a minor in the other two. And it's usually the case. It's not always, but once in a while you find somebody who is so balanced that it's hard to tell. But if you think about your friends, sometimes it's easier to think about them than yourself. But if you think about your friends, you can probably see, are they more thinkers? Are they more doers? Or are they more feelers? And usually it's somewhat clear. And of course, it's a good thing to analyze your own nature. What are you? Are you more oriented to doing, thinking, or feeling? How do you navigate your way through life? It's probably primarily one of the three. It may not be, but it's most likely is. And while there is something to be said for balance, in terms of yoga, you want to use your very natural inclination and it's a strength, really, and make the most of it. And you want to use those practices of yoga to enhance and deepen your own experience of life and of yourself. And so if you've read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I know many of you have, you will remember that line where Yogananda says, and he had just met his teacher, his guru, Sri Teshwar. And Yogananda, who was definitely primarily a bhakti, very, very strong feeling person. He was also a great karma yogi and a great jnana yogi, no question about it. But to analyze the core of his being, he was a bhakti through and through. And he said it was disconcerting at first to realize that Sri Yukteswar, his teacher, was pretty much a goose egg on bhakti. He was not there. He saw the world in terms of cold spiritual mathematics, as Yogananda said. It's just like, here's truth, here's delusion, get with the program, And so Yogananda said it was disconcerting. And as you can imagine, he said, but I learned over time that a realized teacher can guide his students along the lines, and this is the line I love, of their own essential bias, quote unquote. And Yogananda was allowing that his essential bias was this capacity of feeling, for which he was really wired to make his way through the world. So it's kind of an interesting play that way between student and teacher. And you see that out in other traditions where a teacher is, really bhakti and the students really jnana yogi, and it's just fun and kind of interesting. But the point here is to understand ourselves, and this is one little tool. You can put it next to your Myers-Briggs classification if you want to. And, the soul can't be cut up into pieces, but we can reflect about it in different ways. And this is a filter to look at your life. And I think it's useful. I have found it to be useful. So those are the three main paths of yoga. Now there is a fourth, depending on how you look at it. And the fourth path really, or what in our tradition, we more call the term Raja Yoga as the umbrella of all the yogas, the royal, the complete path of yoga. So in our tradition, which is Yogananda's teachings, he talks about Raja Yoga as being the overview that includes all the practices of yoga. Now, Raja Yoga specifically indicates the practices of meditation and pranayama. And in other traditions who say there are four main branches of yoga, they call this the fourth branch. You're either going to just go meditate for 18 hours, or you're going to do a day, or you're going to do all these other practices that have to do with bhakti and karma and Guyana Yoga. In Yogananda's path, it was more the importance of using Raja Yoga primarily, but also using it especially to deepen all the other practices of yoga. And I'll give you a few examples of that. A very feeling person, someone who's all heart, and we all know people like this. If their practice is all feeling and no meditation, they can tend to get emotional. They can tend to ride the waves of life, that are always fluctuating, and be reactive in all their feeling. And that's really not yoga. But if you practice Bhakti Yoga, devotion, and anchor it with a practice of meditation, then it helps to take that feeling deeper and deeper into deeper and deeper love and devotion and divine love, ultimately, which is that compassionate connection with all beings, with all creation. So the meditation practices anchor the Bhakti Yoga. Similarly with karma yoga. So somebody who, as we used to say, serves until they drop, and you just work, it's the American way. It's kind of what we do here. Without meditation, if you have meditation and an active service life, you have this really mutually beneficial practice. Your action in meditation, if it's selfless, deepens your meditation. Your action in the world deepens your meditation. Your meditation deepens your service. And so there again, it's anchored by the practice of meditation. And then I think this is especially true in Guyana Yoga. The wiles of the mind are insidious and tangled. And it is so hard to break through the labyrinth of human thought, which can go around and round in circles in studying philosophies and all these things. Meditation anchors those mental processes in intuition. So you actually are uncovering soul knowledge, which is a whole different thing than studying and book learning and academia. It's understanding the truth about yourself and your life. We all have access to that truth because the laws of the whole universe are manifest in all of us. It can't be denied. We are an expression of all the laws of the universe. So I'll tell you a quick aside. My personal opinion is that the easiest path is Bhakti Yoga, and it is really, I'm more of a karma yogi, more of a doer myself, but my own belief and experience with myself and others is that when you feel love and devotion, you're there. You know, there's no path. You're already there. You've landed. Whereas, you know, we karma yogis are going to work until we get there. You know, we're going to learn how to love eventually, but we're going to, you know what I'm saying? And Guyana yogis, people who are mental, can get really lost in the labyrinths of thought. But to feel your heart connection with others and with life, it is a quick and sure path, in my opinion. Okay, so let's talk about another way to define yoga. And this is, I'll bet somebody can help me out with this, because many of you have been students of yoga for a while. There is a classic definition of yoga that comes from Patanjali. He's the great grandfather of yoga, whose Yoga Sutras are still being studied these days and in great depth, because they hold timeless teachings. And his famous definition of yoga, as many of you will know, is yogas chitta vritti nirodha. That's Sanskrit. And it means, it's a little bit of an exercise to get your mind around what it means, but basically, in a world that is composed of opposites, we have hot, cold, win, lose, success, failure, love, hate, up, down. It is the very nature, the very fabric of the planet we live on. It's unavoidable that those opposites constitute our external reality. Given that, yoga is the balance point, the still point, the quiet point in the midst of that endless fluctuations of life. So literally, yogas chitta vritti nirodha means, yogas means yoga, nirodha means cessation or end of, the stopping of. Vritti means whirlpools or vortices, which are sucking us in a sense. And chitta means, a couple of ways translated. Mind stuff is one way people like to translate it in this context. Consciousness is basically the reaction to the opposites of the world. So to give an example, the world goes on. It's rainy today, it's sunny tomorrow. Today the stock market's up, tomorrow it's down. We're happy, we're sad. We go through this all the time. According to the teachings of yoga and Yogananda, the conditions are actually neutral. They actually are not inherently evil or good, according to the teachings of yoga. It is our reaction to them that determines our experience of them. And this is obvious if you think about it a little bit. If it's raining today, the farmer's rejoicing. If it's raining and it's your wedding day, you're bummed out. There's conditions happening all the time. Or what I always think of in this context is all the really horrendous things I've experienced in my life, including hurts from other people and difficulties and very, very difficult things all of us have gone through, especially in recent years. I find that I can't resist the thought that what I gained through them was worth it. Like the things that you learn from the conditions that are presented to you are compellingly worth it. So even in the most like disastrous circumstances, you find that there's a balance to that. So anyway, the main point of yoga, and this is why this definition is so important, is that we learn to find that stillness that point of balance, that point of steadiness, that point of completeness within ourselves. And the reality is, it's something really worth spending some time thinking about, is we don't live in our conditions. We don't. We live in our responses to the conditions. And I've got to read this little excerpt. This is actually a footnote from the Bhagavad Gita, Yogananda's commentaries, but it's by a physicist. Okay, so and it's a good perspective on it. And here's what he says: we slip so easily into the habit of assuming that what we see and feel in our minds is what is actually going on outside ourselves, beyond the portal of the senses. After all, we are only inches away from the borders of this seemingly familiar land. But there are no colors out there, no hot or cold, no pleasure or pain. Although we experience the world as a series of sensory objects, what actually comes to our senses is energy in the form of vibrations of different frequencies. Very low frequencies for hearing and touch, higher frequencies for warmth, and still higher for vision. The radiations we pick up and trigger neural codes that are made by the brain into a model of the external world. Then this model is given subjective value, and by a trick of the brain, projected outward to form the subjective world. That inner experience is what we habitually equate with external objectivity. So, in essence, we're making it all up. It's kind of a hard pill to swallow in some ways, but it's something really worth thinking about, because something totally different and magical starts to happen when we stop reacting our way through life. We allow things to be. We allow life to be the experience that it is. There's something totally liberating about that. And actually, we provide more opportunity for serendipity, for beauty, for seeing the profundity and the cosmic grandness of our own human life, which is, we all know, is something that's passing. So this is how we contact the soul, really. This is how we get in touch with our true self. We stop reacting and we start to perceive that inner knowing, that witness, that watcher, that place of wisdom, that place of connection, that place of yoga. And so if we're just lost in the reactions, it's going to go on pretty much the way it's been for all this time. You can count on it. The world is doing what it does best. But how we navigate through it, how we behave through it, is under our own control and under our own ability to change. So next time you see a humdinger coming, some really hellacious experience, it's coming. You can see it, whether it's a relationship karma or some big challenging. I have them regularly myself, but see if you can just relax. See if you can just identify with the part of you that's really not touched by it. The part of you that can just witness it, the part of you that can be aware of it and experience it, but not react to it. This is what yoga is. This is the essential practice of yoga. And we become much more a cause and much less an effect of our lives. And so this is really worthwhile work, and it's hard work, of course. the practice of yoga include huge bodies of thought and technique about overcoming our karma, as it said, which is simply the momentum of our habits. It's simply our projected efforts from the past that are coming back to bite us because we're so used to reacting in this way that we're going to, by God, keep reacting that way forever, you know? And so those neural patterns continually, those impressions, that's a wonderful way to look at the word karma. Karma is the impressions left upon us, left upon the soul. When you start to relax away from those impressions, you perceive the soul awareness, the essence, rather than the reaction to conditions, which is our more normal situation. So one of the reasons meditation is so important in the practice of yoga is because it's basically practicing not reacting. Sit there, be quiet, let the thoughts come, let the thoughts go. Identify not with them, but with something deeper, more eternal, more sure inside of yourself. And so the core of Raja Yoga really has to do with this practice of meditation and this learning of this very essential idea that we are not our thoughts, we are not the reactions to our conditions, we are not born, we do not die, we have always been. This is the essential knowledge of the soul. It's very comforting, actually, to know. So I've said a lot here, and I've got a few more things I want to cover before we open it up generally for thoughts. But does anybody have any comments or questions or feedback on anything I've covered so far? And then if not, I'll go on for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll start to wrap up.
This is Stephanie. It's awesome, Michael.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for being here too.
You're welcome.
Don't be shy. Anything that's on your mind, doesn't matter what, or any other questions about yoga too. Not that I'm an expert, but I haven't practiced a long time, and so I'm happy to give you my 2 cents.
Michael, that was a great summation, or putting all the different aspects of yoga into something that's really helpful for me to get the big picture, kind of put a little bit of structure to it so that I can understand it better and meditate on it even more.
That's great. No, I think it really grabs the essence of all traditions and religions, and really it's been so helpful for me because, you know, I was much more judgmental before I started practicing yoga. Not that I knew anything about life or anything deep about myself, but it didn't stop me from judging others. And so it really helped me to understand. And the other thing is, anyone who embraces this very deep work of trying to overcome this karmic, you know, mode of reactivity to every stimulus in life, it's very hard work trying to overcome your habits, which is how karma expresses in our lives. Anyone who really goes after that is bound to become humble because it is really hard work, you know, and it is hard to make even a little bit of progress. And so the fact that anybody is willing to try is a great thing, you know, but thank you. Glad to hear it, Jyoti. Anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, I'm gonna cover just 2 more quick points that are really worth knowing about. Some yogic paths in traditions don't really use the word God very much, which was good for me because I'd had enough of that word by the time I was out of high school. But of course, I've come around to get the semantics out of the way and understand, no, what we're talking about here is our understanding, our ability to perceive the truth, our ability to know ourselves, to become ourselves. This is what we're all talking about. I don't care what words you clothe it in. If you drill down in, you're going to find somebody who's doing the same thing you're doing. They are looking for joy. They are looking for connection. They're looking for yoga. It's universal in that sense. Even the most depraved actions are a very failed and unfortunate attempt to touch this place of yoga that exists within each of us. But I wanted to give you the Yogananda's definition of God, which is a great thing to meditate on. Yogananda and yoga philosophy in general talks about Sat Chit Ananda. It's another Sanskrit word. It means, in this context, existence, consciousness, and bliss. And I'm going to explain. My belief is that this is a wonderfully succinct and intuitive way to understand what God is. First of all, existence. We all want to exist. We want to be alive. It is written in our very, atoms that we want to live. We want to exist. Second thing is, do we want to exist in a coma on a hospital bed? No. We want to be conscious of our existence. We want to be awake that we exist, awake to the fact that we exist. So existence, Sat, Chit, consciousness. And the third one is bliss. Do we want to exist and be awake and suffer all the time? No. Very intuitive. We want bliss. We want ever new joy. That is what our souls are seeking. And this is the very definition of spirit or God in yogic philosophy. We want to exist, we want to be conscious, and we want joy. And this is the goal of yoga practice, is to experience that joy deep within our own souls. So, in normal everyday life, we are cruising along, as Yogananda says. If we have a desire fulfilled, we're happy. If we have a desire thwarted, we're sad. If we don't have either of those very much, we're bored. And isn't it true? And then somewhere, sometimes, even if you're not practicing yoga, in most cases, you'll find when all those are sort of subsided a little bit and things even out, there's sort of this passive peace that happens to us once in a while. So those are the four basic fluctuations of our consciousness, and they're constantly happening. It's a bit of a roller coaster for most of us life. Yoga, Satchidananda, is the fifth state. It's the state of joy. And Yogananda says that it is reflected in that peace. So if you use the analogy of an ocean, the wave is up, you're happy because the desire is fulfilled. It's unfulfilled, you're sad, you're bored if it's not either. But then sometimes the waters just calm down and you feel this sense of peace. And if that peace is long enough and deep enough and quiet enough, you will see the reflection of spirit in your soul. So the soul is sort of an individual container that the light of spirit is shining on, and is really our essential individuality and a perfect reflection of spirit, which is ever existing, ever conscious, ever new joy. So this force of spirit, believe it or not, according to yoga philosophy. And I do believe it. It is consistent with my own intuitive feeling about it. It is behind the curtain is joy. Behind the curtain is this intense bliss that threw all this incredible cosmos into being. And if we get caught up in the movie, if we get caught up in the drama, we can't be aware of that bliss. But if we stay even, if we go to that place of yoga, we can feel that bliss. Even in the, as Yogananda used to call it, the river of bliss that flows beneath the sands of my perceptions. So that it's behind the curtain, behind the duality, behind the endless fluctuations of light and dark, which is the nature of our world. There is the soul, eternal, at one, ever new bliss. So, in terms of religious paradigms, this is one I can get behind. Even if it were true, it'd be a good idea. But it is, there is some intuitive knowledge in each of us that resonates with joy, that recognizes there's something home about joy. There's something most real about joy. There's something most true. When we feel joy, we feel most ourselves. So it is intuitive, and it is something we each have to rediscover for ourselves, reawaken for ourselves. Okay, that's plenty from me. Yes, Susan.
Where in this process do you find that place that you've been looking for, that you say, exactly, this is exactly where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. This is the purpose I'm here for. I finally found it. And then when you do that, and you do that for a while, you try to find that place with every job you have to do, even the little jobs you have to do.
Right.
To bring in that energy in there. Is that part of the process too?
I see what you're asking, and it's a little tricky. The Eastern philosophy has this idea of Maya, the illusion, and it is what sucks us in those vortices to get all enmeshed and make it something it's not, and try to get our joy from it when it's really can't give it. It can give it sometimes, sometimes we're happy if things are going great, but then there has to be the trough after the wave. So it's a little tricky, because if the goal, the yogic thought is to realize that it's going to go on like this ad nauseum. We are not here. The purpose of this life isn't to have a perfect life. The purpose of this life is to forge a deeper understanding, a deeper realization of our essential nature. But to finish your question, because maybe I didn't quite get to it, I do believe, and you see this in great saints and great souls, when you attain that place of yoga, everything is an act of love. Everything carries joy. There is the difference between cleaning toilets and writing the great American novel is nothing. It is all one, because there's no ego perception of needing it to be other than it is. So I do believe all the mundane things of life are just as important and potentially just as fulfilling as anything else. But go ahead, you were going to add to your question.
I was just going to be more specific on, is there the notion or the concept that you are born with gifts or a potential or that you are searching for and you want to fulfill. Your service as this entity in this time zone.
I get it.
here.
I get it. Yes, no, very good point. And that definitely shows up in Yogananda's teachings. He says to analyze yourself pre-socialization, pre-teens. See, think about who you were in that time frame where you're just becoming yourself and you're still playing, but you're not an adult, and analyze, what are those qualities? What was meaningful to you? What came out there? And that's a good guide for guiding where to bring your life. So he did definitely address that kind of, we did come here for a cosmic reason, and we also came here for a very simple human reason as well. And some of the near-death experience, people talk about that a lot, that there was this sort of big lesson, but also just these very human, simple, basic lessons they were here to learn. So,
Thanks.
oh, you bet. Anyone else?
Hey there.
Hi.
I just wanted to say I appreciate how you anchor in for us what you're talking about, the avenues that you're discussing. I feel from you. I feel your heart. I feel the mind. I feel the selfless service, and I hear the joy. And that's why I keep showing up and wanting to be part of this community is that's real. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. And speaking of community, and this was my thought for a closing idea, although we can have more questions if there are any, but to really get traction on your spiritual life, environment is so important. It's so easy to be sucked into the cultural and energetic world all around you. And what we're trying to do with Polestar is create, consciously create that culture that supports a deep dive into your own inner work. And that's a real core value for us. So, and it does make a big difference. I've been blessed to live in spiritual community most of my life. And I think it's made a big difference for me. I think it would have been pretty much a write-off without it. So I definitely believe in the power of thinking about your environment and making it as conducive to your values and your values and vision for life. So.
Yes, so much, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else out there? So some long-term yogis out there, I see. You got anything to add? Feel free. All righty. Well, we have a little bit of a treat today because, I usually ask Christy to come over and sing, but she's in my house, so I get to sing with her. So I'm gonna move over here a little bit. She's gonna come in, and you got a song? Oh, we got one. You have one too?
Do yours. I didn't call the number yet.
All right.
I can do something. Let me do one.
You want to go first? All right, we'll just have a couple songs, then we can have a minute of silence and we'll close. Thanks for being here, everyone. Whoa.
Hold on, I'm on a ball. I gotta focus on the.
Oh, you're switch. I've been using that one.
Okay.
Yeah. This is one of those
I couldn't balance and play.
chair balls you sort of rock around on.
Okay, that's good. Thanks. Namah Shivaya. Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Hara, Shivoham, Shivoham. Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Chidananda Rupara, Shivoham, Shivoham, Hara, Shivoham, Shivoham.
Thanks. This is a chant a friend of ours wrote. I'm thinking about all those, it's kind of a warrior chant. Thinking about all those young men out there fighting for their country or, yeah. I am brave, I am strong, I am a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. I am brave, I am strong, I am a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. I am brave, I am strong, I'm a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. I am brave, I am strong, I'm a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. I am brave, I am strong, I'm a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. I am brave, I am strong, I'm a warrior, lifelong and all the while. I'm defeated in every trial. Let's take just a moment, silence. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Great to see you all. Thanks for joining us today. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you so much. Bye,
Okay.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Many blessings.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Mookie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mookie.
Grandma.
Bye.
Bye.